All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today I'll be doing my preview and prediction for Notre Dame versus Ohio State. Top 5 matchup. They'll go down in Columbus to kick things off. 14.5 point line in favor of the Buckeyes. Over-unders at 58.5. This one will be on ABC at 7:30 prime time. Ohio State leads the series 4-2 all time. The last win came in the 2016 Fiesta Bowl. Looking at the Notre Dame offense, Tyler Buchner takes over under center. Dual threat guy, 6'1", 215, but he looks a lot bigger than that. He plays with more tenacity than you'd think for his size. I expected him to be the starter by midseason last year, but Jack Cohen was so good. I knew the speed was very impressive. His size makes him a versatile runner. He wasn't as great as a passer, only a 3-to-3 TD-INT ratio in the year, a couple hundred yards. Only really saw meaningful time as a passer against Virginia Tech. I think Buchner's going to do very solid in this offense under Tommy Rees. He stays, declines to go to LSU. I think that would have made him one of the highest paid coordinators in the game, but he sticks true to his alma mater where he was a very successful quarterback, and Buchner takes over. I'm very interested to see how he does this season, especially in this game as a runner. I think that's really where they're going to make him shine. Former lacrosse player, I believe, so he's really good in the open field. Buchner, this is going to be a big-time opportunity for him to impress. Drew Pine as well, he's the backup, but, limited appearances last year. I expect Buchner to really be the full-time starter, unless he plays his way out of the job, of course. This running game, though, Chris Tyree, plenty of speed. He wasn't really effective last year if the offensive line struggled, early on in the year, but nearly 500 yards and almost 7 yards per carry in 2020. Scored 2 times as a pass catcher and had a kick return touchdown. So he's a very good, versatile player that you use on this football team. Logan Diggs, a very good scheme fit with his one-cut abilities. He's a respectable pass catcher as well. He might play in this game. Marcus Freeman, it sounded optimistic when he talked about Diggs being able to come back from his injury he suffered this offseason. I think one big thing in this game, though, for Notre Dame is the tight ends. They're going to be key because these guys can really block on the edge, and they're facing, a defensive line that was very soft last year for Ohio State. Of course, we'll get to that defense here momentarily, but if the tight ends can lead the charge, the speed that Tyree has, the versatility that Diggs brings to the table, these guys could be in for a field day, especially with Buchner's threat as a runner. Michael Mayer, of course, leading the way. He does more than just catch the ball. He's a really good blocker on the edge. Mitchell Evans, Kevin Bauman, these guys are going to play crucial roles in setting up this offense for success. The offensive line really struggled early on in the season. They were dead last in one point at tackles for loss allowed. I remember I picked them to lose that Wisconsin game because they were so outmatched in 3 rushing yards, 6 sacks allowed, 12 tackle for losses allowed against Wisconsin, but they still won the game because, the defense had a field day in the fourth quarter against Graham Mertz. But they were just bullied in the trenches for most part of the season on the offensive front. They really started to run the ball better late in the year. They struggled immensely against Oklahoma State in the bowl game. But for the most part, they kept that pass rush at bay. It was the nation's top pass rush, my opinion, of course, but the numbers also speak for themselves. They did a very good job in pass protection in that game. They're looking to carry that over here against Ohio State defense that, they weren't very consistent in finding the passer last year against the better opponent. High expectations for this offensive line. Last year I had high expectations for them as well, and they kind of disappointed, but some of the same names I was talking about last year, Jarrett Patterson, he's the nation's best center. He's an elite run blocker. Did not give up a sack all year long. I thought Josh Lugg really started to find a flow late in the year. Blake Fisher, I was very excited for him in week 1. He got hurt, though. They were down to a third-string tackle at one point, early in the season. That was a big contribution to their struggles. He got back on the field, though, in the bowl game against Oklahoma State and did not allow a sack on 70 dropbacks against that pass rush. That is elite work. Blake Fisher, I think he's in for a big season. Zeke Correll is here to provide some depth. Joe Wall at left tackle. So they got a lot of veterans. This offensive line, very favorable matchup if we see the same Buckeye defense as last year because these guys, they can really run block and they can be nasty. And the pass blocking, I thought, was tremendous towards the end of the year. Avery Davis at wide receiver, torn ACL out for the year. That's going to put a lot more stress on guys like Braden Lenzy and Lorenzo Styles. 5'11", 200 is Lenzy. Styles, he caught 24 balls for 344 yards as a freshman last year. He was a high impact, or a high recruited freshman rather. Likely a slot option, but they might have to get him involved outside. Tobias Merriweather, a top 100 recruit incoming. He might have to see some time because they're not deep at wide receiver by any means. Michael Mayer, 71 grabs, 840 yards, 7 touchdowns. Great hands, versatile. Lines up in the slot or outside or right on the line of scrimmage. But he can do a variety of different things for them, and he's going to be heavily usaged in this game. Heavy usage for Mayer in this game because he's really one of the key to the offense. He's really one of the biggest keys to this offense. Styles, though, very interested to see what kind of role he plays this season. But they're kind of watered down at wide. They're kind of watered down at pass catcher. Overall, a solid group after losing a handful of starters here. Kyron Williams being the most notable, and Jack Cohen, of course. But I like this offense. I think they match up well. We'll get to the Ohio State offense next. C.J. Stroud, he was really resilient. He was my Heisman pick a season ago. A great deep ball, confident, 4,400 plus yards, 44 touchdowns, 6 picks. He ranks first and third in school history in single game passing yards. Dwayne Haskins' game is sandwiched in between that. And that came in 2 of the closer games on the year when they lost to Oregon and then against Utah. That's what he had to do for this offense last year because their defense did not do them a lot of favors. Travion Henderson, he was my top impact freshman from a season ago, and he lived up to that. 215-pounder brings plenty of speed to the table, 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns rushing, 4 more scores as a pass catcher, that is 6.8 yards per carry. This was a phenomenal running game, but the biggest problem is they don't run it that much. 6 games of 40-plus carries in 2020. They only had 2 of those this past season. One of them was in a blowout. I want to see them control the clock a little more. Obviously, it's hard to do that when you're so good at throwing the football with what they had. I totally understand it, but I want to see these guys pound the rock a little more. Mayan Williams, he's another big back, 7 yards per carry, 500-plus yards on the year. Evan Pryor, he's out for the year. A little bit of depth will be missing with Pryor being gone, but overall, great duo here. I just want to see them take it a little bit more slower, run the ball a little bit more because they're very effective in doing so. I think that'll help out their defense that's really kind of struggled last year to find a stride, and that might be the case this season as well. So I think the more carries from their running backs is something I want to see. The offensive tackle, though, duo reloads, much like the wide receiver duo they have. Paris Johnson, he's going to kick out the tackle. He's a terrific run blocker. Wasn't as polished in pass protection, but was still pretty great overall. Expect him to do great things now that he's back to his natural position. Luke Weipler, a strong, athletic interior lineman that was good in both aspects of his game last year. And DeJuan Jones, he got on the field last year after Thayer Munford kicked inside. They put him at right tackle. It was an elite run blocker. Kind of like Johnson. Has some work to do in pass protection, but, I love this guy. 6'8", 360, very athletic prospect. Great at tackle. Interior, not as polished, but I think overall with Weipler leading the way, they're pretty solid on the O-line. Donovan Jackson, Matthew Jones look like they'll be the starters at guard for me. We'll see what happens, though, when they roll things out week 1. The wide receiver group for Ohio State, though, this is really where they make their money. Jackson Smith-Njigba leads the way, 95 grabs, 600-plus yards. Those are both single-season school records. Only found the end zone 9 times, but he's going to do that a lot this season. He's a phenomenal route runner, a great playmaker, elite in the open field. He does everything just terrifically. Emeka Egbuka, he's going to fill that Garrett Wilson role, I think, with that great body control. He can separate, he adjusts pretty well. A yard after catch, pass catcher. Julian Fleming, he's physical, and he's got some more speed after the catch. These guys are both 205 pounds. They're both top-ranked recruits in their respective classes. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., he showcased good things in the Rose Bowl. Pretty elusive. He's got quick feet in the short area as well. Was able to win repeatedly. 6 grabs, 71 yards, 3 scores, and his only opportunity to shine. I think that he's going to have a big-time breakout season. And, they have a lot of depth at wide receiver. That's obviously a great part of their offense. I think the biggest thing is, what will they do against Notre Dame's defense? Because Marcus Freeman's really going to scheme some things up. He likes to press. He likes to play man. Those guys certainly have the edge. Ohio State does if Notre Dame looks to make that their game plan. These guys have plenty of skill. They will win repeatedly if you want to play man coverage against them. C.J. Stroud has plenty of confidence. I remember a 4th down in the Rose Bowl. He looks to his left, sees one-on-one, and he fires it deep. Doesn't even worry about the sticks. He goes right to the end zone, and they score. He's just that confident. So you'll get eaten up in man coverage by these pass catchers and this quarterback. So I'm very interested to see the game plan from the Notre Dame defense. They have allowed 19.7 points per game each of the last 2 seasons. Slightly more yards allowed this past year than 2 seasons ago. 359.7 per game. That was really good. This is a very good defensive line. Isaiah Foskey, 11 sacks, 6 forced fumbles a season ago. High energy first step. He's got some nice length, good leg drive. That range allows him to knock the ball away a lot. 6 fumbles, that's pretty ridiculous. The brothers are Justin and Jason Ademiola. They're ranked 2nd and 3rd on the team in sacks last year. That was right behind Foskey, of course. Riley Mills, a 6'5", 283-pounder, gave them some good reps. Same to be said about Howard Cross. 6 of the top 7 leaders in sacks are back from this football team. They also had Chris Smith, 6'3", 304 from Harvard. This is one of the most experienced D-lines in college football. I don't think they've gotten enough love this offseason, but I know they weren't the most productive by any means, but these guys were really good. So I think that Notre Dame's defensive line, big task here against this O-line, but they can really control things. I think it's a pretty underrated unit. Front 7 as a whole, they had 3 veterans at linebacker coming back. JT Bertrand emerged out of nowhere to lead the team in tackles, eclipsed the century mark. Good speed in the open field, physical imposer, nice raw athlete. It's there for him to improve in coverage. I'm very interested to see steps he takes in that category this season. Bo Bauer, 5th season. He had a career best 47 stops last season. Jack Kaiser's a 3rd-year player. He made all sorts of plays. He had 45 tackles, 5 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 pick sixes last year. So this front 7 is very good for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman has a lot to play with here. The only player I really lose in the secondary is Kyle Hamilton. He didn't play all that much last year, and they replaced him with Brandon Joseph, a rangy DB with elite ball skills who was an All-American in his time with the Wildcats. The rest of this DB group, kind of suspect. Cam Hart, he's the most physical corner on the roster. Clarence Lewis, 3rd on the team with 53 tackles last year. He struggled big time in the Fiesta Bowl, though. Houston Griffin, a vet. He struggled in coverage at times, just not as quick in the short area and did not record any plays on the ball last year. He's going to battle with DJ Brown for that starting spot, who struggled with tackling. I like Tariq Brassey and Ryan Barnes. They're going to compete for nickel. So they got plenty of guys here. I think it's a comfortable group of DBs for Marcus Freeman. Overall, it's a very experienced defense, and Brassey was quite respectable last year in those nickel packages. How will it work against Ohio State, where they're going to have a lot of DBs on the field? Personnel versus the Buckeyes, I think, will be a big reason why they lose this game. Going to want to play a lot of man. That passing attack is certainly going to be tough. I'm confident in this group to grow throughout the year, but the game in Columbus is really going to be that one that makes them want to work, because they're going to be really frustrated after this game, I think. The Ohio State defense, though, Jim Knowles comes over, implement this 4-2-5, and it was the best defense in college football last year. They led the nation in sacks per game at Oklahoma State. Very soft unit for Ohio State, though. 269 yards allowed on the ground in week 2. They allowed under 107 in the next 9 games. Thought things had changed. Then they played Michigan. 4 straight 60-yard drives in the second half, allowed over 7 yards per carry. 300 yards on the ground. They also got gashed by Utah in the Rose Bowl. This run defense was just completely poor. The defensive line did not live up to expectations one bit. The talent is still there for them, though. That's the good news. The pass rush needs to be better. Defensive tackle Askel Garrett led them in sacks last year. Freshman Zach Sawyer is here to step up, though. He was third on the team with sacks, which isn't great from your freshman that didn't play a whole lot. Former number 1 ranked recruit, though. Zach Harrison's been disappointing. Maybe they can find that second gear at him. Happy with the size on the interior, though. I like Tyleik Williams, a slim-down athletic guy, one of the top defensive tackles in college football. Teron Vincent, Jerron Cage, these guys are all 300-plus pounds. They're not overwhelming by any means, but they got good, respectable size. They can really clog things on the interior. It can be a good matchup against Jarrett Patterson. Linebackers are a big concern, though. That's why I mentioned those tight ends. If they can block on the edge, I think they're going to have a field day running the ball, because they have 2 guys in Steel Chambers and now Chip Trainum, who comes over from Arizona State, who are former running backs playing this position. I think C.J. Hicks, the incoming 5-star, is going to have to play a big role this year, which is not exactly great when you got to get your true freshmen on the field to help out with personnel. Tommy Eichenberg was good at 64 tackles, but he still wasn't great in run support. Bad angles from the defense when its defensive line got pushed around did not do them any favors. They were just getting bullied, and now they face a team that has a similar philosophy on offense. I think Tommy Rees is certainly going to have some interesting to try and expose the front 7. I don't expect them to really be any different in this game. I do think over the course of the season they will, but they got to be a lot tougher and a lot more active than they were last season. The potential is certainly there. Numerous 5-stars, plenty of talent. They got a handful of veterans as well. So I think the front 6 now, I think this is an interesting group. But in this game, I think they might be a little bit outmatched. I thought personnel in the secondary wouldn't be as bad last year compared to 2021, because they didn't really recruit anyone in the secondary that year. It was just 3 guys. It was just 3 guys coming in pretty much. Ryan Watts transfers out, though. Lathan Ransom, I believe he's gone as well, coming off a leg injury. They landed 6 DBs last year, 2 top 5 corners, so maybe they'll start providing assists. Jordan Hadcock, Jacqueline Johnson. I like Ronnie Hickman. He's an enforcer to make plays all over the field, but as a higher doesn't do much for them in coverage. Denzel Burke, he was great with tail pass breakups. Tanner McAllister coming over from Oklahoma State. That is a massive addition for this defense, because now not only were they coming off a poor year, but they got to transition to this different scheme, which might be a big challenge for anybody, no matter what kind of players you have. So Tanner McAllister coming over, he's going to be the catalyst of this secondary, really allow these guys to learn much faster. We'll see what they do. It's really tough to, kind of assume what this defense will do. I don't expect them to be much better than they were last year, so I think that they're going to struggle against the run in this game. Getting to the quarterback might be an issue. Long term this season, I think they will start to kind of come into their own, but for this game, I do think that they're going to be kind of what they were last year, and that was not very tough, pretty sluggish, playmaking not evident. Looking at team comparisons, Ohio State has the edge for me on all offensive positions. C.J. Stroud, one of the Heisman, he's the Heisman favorite. He's one of the top quarterbacks in college football right there with Bryce Young. At running back, I think Notre Dame's not far behind, but Travion Henderson, Maya Williams, these guys were just much more productive last season, running behind a great offensive line. Notre Dame, they have a pretty good offensive line of their own. I was very impressed with the effort in the Fiesta Bowl. From a pass protection standpoint, I think Ohio State has the slight edge there, like what they got at tackle, and I think their interior is a little bit stronger as well. Pass catchers, no debate there. Notre Dame's pretty watered down, while Ohio State, these guys are completely loaded, led by JSN. Michael Mayer, though, he's one of the nation's top tight ends, so the pass-catching core, no doubt Ohio State, Notre Dame, lacking at that position, especially with depth right now. The defensive line, I'm going to give it to Notre Dame because these guys, I think they're very deep. They're very experienced. Ohio State, their defensive line, yeah, they're talented. But again, like we just talked about, they were not very tough last year. And that was a big reason why they did not win a championship or compete for one, because the defense could not get a stop because those guys were, the sole focal point of why they were so poor. And now linebackers, well, give Notre Dame the edge. You got a handful of veterans. JT Bertrand's really going to emerge, I think, as an NFL draft prospect this season. And I gave the secondary even because neither of these groups were exactly great last year. I do think Brandon Joseph's the best DB in this game, but I think from a personnel standpoint, Notre Dame's really going to struggle to match up in this contest. While Ohio State, they do have Tanner McAllister and Denzel Burke, two good players, but again, they weren't very good downfield themselves last year, especially the Penn State game. I don't know if you guys remember that one, where the secondary was just completely poor throughout the day. So I'm going to give it an even. I don't really see a particular edge in the back end, even though I do think Joseph could really be a great center fielder for Notre Dame this year. And my final thoughts and my prediction on Notre Dame, I think they're going to compete. This is going to be a closer game than people think. I do think they'll cover that 14.5-point line. Ohio State, they're going to score, though. They're going to be licking their chops. They're going to get things done through the air. Again, I think that just the personnel for Notre Dame, the secondary, is a bit of an issue considering what Marcus Freeman wants to do. It's not going to work against the Buckeyes, so we'll have to see what he schemes up. He's had all offseason to do it. Passing tech, though, they're going to be tough, and I think the balance will just be a little bit too much for them. I do think the Notre Dame defensive line, if they can kind of have their way with the Ohio State offensive front, then they can really start to shake things up. But in the back end, I don't really expect much from their covering unit. Biggest key for me, though, for Ohio State, win on the interior on both sides, big plays on offense. This is a big play offense. Remember, Michigan beat them last year because they kept everything in front of them. They could not win downfield, and that was a big reason why they were able to win that game. Notre Dame, you're going to have to control the clock and find pass rush on those longer distances because I keep harping on how the secondary might not be able to hold up. If you can find some pass rush on, second and third and long, it's really going to help them out immensely. I'm very interested to see how many blitz packages they roll out. But you got to control the clock against Ohio State in offense like this. I mean, Michigan is a great example of that. When you can run the ball like that, even if your defense is awful, you can get a handful of stops, 2 or 3 of them. And if your offense is doing work, controlling the clock, you're probably going to win the game. Michigan is a great blueprint of that. I think Notre Dame needs to try and follow that. And I do think they will run the ball with some good success. Buckner's going to have some good plays. Ohio State, for me, though, is going to win this game. I expect slight improvements on defense for the Buckeyes. Too tough to expect a complete revamp, though, here in week 1. But this is going to be a great measuring stick. Notre Dame, I think they will compete. People, not very high on the Irish, and I can understand that a little bit, but I do think this will be a closer game than people think. Very excited for college football to return here with this top 5 matchup. So that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.